Patton had the Air Force bomb and shell that area so bad at St. Lo in France, we busted through it. And I can't believe the sight that I could see. It was just scary, seeing so much destruction and death, animals and men, tanks, equipment that we went by, crippled. It was amazing.
You are about to embark upon the Great Crusade.
To meet this mounting aggression.
And make no mistake about it, good will prevail.
My name is Robert Louis Chouinard. Early on in life, got to be called Boots. For some reason or other, people liked that because I used to wear boots once in a while, so they called me Boots, and I accepted that. I kind of liked that better than Robert. Anyway, it was during the Depression when I was born, and I was the youngest of 8 children. I had 6 older sisters and a brother, and we didn't do much together. As a matter of fact, my mother and father were so occupied, they didn't do much with us either. I didn't remember doing hardly anything with my parents. That we never went any place. We didn't have a car. Of course, hardly anybody had a car. So we stayed in the neighborhood. The first Chouinard was born in Normandy. As a matter of fact, it's strange, when I was in Normandy with the army, my father wrote to me, said, "Son, you have relatives here." Well, I said, that's fine. Well, anyway.
Well, let me ask you this. Where were you on Pearl Harbor Day, December the 7th?
Well, of course, it was a Sunday, and we had been to church, like we always did. And, people were church people in those days. Everybody went to church. And when after church, we got word that Pearl Harbor got bombed. Well, of course, that's changed everybody's plans. Up until then, not being a good student didn't deter me from wanting to go to college and play football. That was my goal. I would pray as a young boy to God, "Please, God, help me be a college football player." As it turned out, it happened that way. But I had no idea. All the athletes in those days, I was the end of an era that went to a prep school after high school, would go to high school for 4 years, and then instead of going right into college, playing football or sports, whatever, we went to a prep school for 2 years. And it was marvelous, and that was my goal. And I figured, well, I'm not a good student, but maybe I'd get better, and I'd get more mature, learn how to study. And I was really looking forward to it. But the war broke out, and it's kind of put the crimp on everything. And all the guys that I knew all jumped into the service. They wanted to get in there. They quit high school and everything. I didn't. I wasn't a good student. I should have done it, but my goal was to go on and play football. So I stayed in school. As it turned out, our coach took 3 of us players into Boston College to visit the athletic administration and so forth. And we had quite a time there being interviewed, and they wanted us all. They wanted the 3 of us. And they says, "Look, we want you guys, but you got to go to prep school." I said, "Wow, that's what I want to do anyway." They said, "We have a list of prep schools." And I knew of those schools because I followed the prep schools for years. But they said, "We have one new school on that list, It's a military school. Whoopee! The war just started. A military school. That was like frosting on the cake. So we says, wow. It was a school in Virginia, a prep school in Virginia, a military school called Massanutten. It was an Indian name. It was in the Shenandoah Valley. Well, the three of us went down there, and we went there for 1 year. And after the end of that year, we couldn't go any place but the service. The service was going to take us. So I got 1 year in. And that 1 year helped me so much. It just made me. It made me a better football player because we played against teams so much better than we were. We were playing against like college freshman teams. We played against the Annapolis plebes and military preps. It was quite an experience. So it helped me tremendously. So I wanted to go in the Marines when we come home. One of my friends went into the Marines. I wanted to go in the Marines. And the other fellow wasn't so hot on it. I told my mother when she was in the hospital, I visited her, I said, Ma, I'm going to go in the Marines. She says, oh, please, don't do that. And she cried and begged for me not to. And I wanted to be a Marine. I said, you know, I love their uniforms, and I wanted to be in one of those uniforms, and I wanted to be a macho guy. So I said, oh, hell with it. I let the Army take me. So I got in the Army, I went alone, and the next thing I know, I was sent to Texas. And I was introduced to a 90 millimeter gun and a brand new outfit. All guys my age, brand new outfit, 128th AAA Gun Battalion.
If you're enjoying this video, you should join our exclusive Patreon community to receive early access to videos each week, the chance to send questions to our heroes, and much more. We scour the country to identify, film, share, and preserve these first-hand battlefield accounts, and time is of the essence. To join our mission, visit patreon.com/American Veterans Center or click the link in our description. It's up to each of us to guard their legacy and honor their sacrifice. Thanks, and now back to the interview.
We went through training, went to maneuvers, and the next thing I know, we were in New Jersey. We got on a boat the next day after being there, and I looked at that boat. We were one of the first ones to get to it, and I could see the name, Queen Mary. I said, holy mackerel, we're going in style. Get on that ship with my battery, and they put us right on the stern of the boat. In our sleeping compartment was the old pool. They had a pool, swimming pool. They converted that to a bedroom. My bunk was the top bunk, like the 8th one up against the ceiling. But we spent our time going over from New Jersey to Scotland, zigzagging, all alone. We didn't go with a convoy. Now here we were, 10,000 soldiers on this ship. I thought to myself, the Germans would be a prize that they sunk us. And we went to Scotland and then to England. We got to England we were on a field in England on the coast. I don't know much about England, but didn't have a chance to be much like a tourist. We stayed in the field. My battery was one part of the field, and on the other side of the field was an infantry outfit, a huge infantry outfit. They had a sign out, 29th. Didn't mean much to me, but we trained. We could see them working out. We were preparing our guns. Our guns had to be greased to the ultimate. prepared for the worst scenario in case when we landed on the beach of Normandy and we had to go through water, the guns wouldn't malfunction. So they had to be done thoroughly. We didn't realize it. We thought we were doing a good job, and an inspection team came along to inspect the guns. They looked at them and they said, "Not good enough. You got to keep doing these. They're not good enough." Oh, so we kept doing them. Well, a day later, that infantry outfit pulled out. We could see them having a powwow in the field. They pulled out. Next day, it was D-Day. They were the first wave to hit the beach. If our guns were ready, I don't know, we probably would have been with them, but I don't know what wave. Could have been third, second wave, I don't know, but we didn't make it. We didn't go until 5 days later. That was soon enough for me. Going across that channel with all those LSTs, and each LST had a big balloon attached to it, floating above it. It had a cable attached to the LST so that it would stay there. And they had cables hanging down off that balloon to prevent planes from coming in, strafing us. All you could see when we got out in that harbor to cross over to France was ships. We got out in position in an LST and looked around, and all I saw was ships and balloons. Of course, I had a big lump in my throat. I said, "Holy mackerel, how come I'm here?" Well, anyway, we went across the channel, and we hit the tide wrong, so we had to stay there for the tide to be right. And of course, there were several beaches. We were at Omaha Beach, and there were like 3 other beaches along the way, so there was a lot of ships ready to go on. The Germans came over and bombed us while we were sitting there. And so that was the first introduction to the war. And we survived that all right. Everybody was frightened to death. Well, anyway, came time to get onto the beach. The tide was right. We dropped our front of the ship down, and I was on a tractor that pulled our gun. We had 4 guns, and each had a big Caterpillar that was like a tank. It had tracks like a tank. It was boxy. It was metal. I sat in the front seat with a driver and the sergeant. I was a corporal. I had space. My gun crew weren't so well off. They sat behind me in a compartment, no windows. They couldn't see anything. Their backs against the wall, their knees touching, and that's how they had to sit. One guy had some space who stood up to man a machine gun on a turret. So luckily, I had a better seat. But the seat wasn't comfortable, of course. It was a little wooden bench about 4 inches off the floor. I could get my feet out, but my gun crew sat on a bench like that, and their knees were practically touching. They had no space at all. If somebody got a cramp, everybody had to get out of the way. So I avoided that. Well, anyway, that's how we traveled. So we got on that beach. I thought we were heading up to the back of the beach, where I read where there was a stalemate, and there was all hedgerow fighting. I thought it was where we were heading, but we didn't go that way. So we didn't know where we were going. Nobody tells you what's happening next. You didn't even have an itinerary or anything. So next thing you know, we traveled along and stopped. We stopped in convoy for quite a while. Then finally we got the word to move on along. Well, while we were stopped, the Americans had just taken over a German gun outfit, a German 88 gun outfit, a battery just like ourselves, all dug in, and they just captured it, and they were cleaned out the dead, the American dead and the wounded. So when we got in there, the German dead were all over the place. Their weapons blown up pieces. It was a terrible sight. That was within a few hours of me being on Normandy Beach, so it was quite an awakening. While we were waiting at that gun position where we took over, we protected Cherbourg. And I think that's what the Germans were doing, protecting Cherbourg, bombing things that Americans were sending there. So we were to stop Germans from doing the same thing, because General Patton's Third Army was due to come there at Cherbourg, and that was our purpose, to protect them. That was our first job. Well, it took probably 5 or 6 weeks after the invasion for that to happen. And next thing you know, that outfit, the Third Army, get going, and they got onto Omaha Beach. And that stalemate was still there, with the Germans deep. Patton didn't waste any time. Bradley, who was our general before, was so aggressive. But Patton had the Air Force bomb and shell that area so bad. At St. Lo in France, we busted through it. I was in a convoy with I don't know how many people, and we went through there, and I can't believe the sight that I could see. Having vision in my position on that Caterpillar, it was just scary, seeing so much destruction and death, animals and men, tanks, equipment that we went by, crippled. It was amazing. Well, anyway, we got through it, and we kept moving and kept moving. It was great. We'd take a town, the people would be out there greeting us, hugging us, shaking our hands, thanking us, It was wonderful. And we were heading for Paris. I said, oh my God, I'm going to be in Paris, liberating Paris. This is going to be tremendous. Couldn't wait. We got to Paris. Of course, we captured it. But they sent my gun battalion around the outside of it to guard a bridge. I missed it all. I missed all that fun. I don't know if this is proper, but they said if a guy didn't get laid, then he was a sissy. So from there on, we went to Nancy, France, and the front stopped. They needed to get supplies. They told us, we're going to be here for a couple of months. Make some provisions so that you won't have to just stay in tents. So we gathered, each gun crew gathered what materials they could get and made a little makeshift hut by our guns. So we slept in a makeshift hut instead of our pup tent. And, it got to be winter. And the Battle of Bulge started around the end of December, and we were still in this field. And we got word to move out. But in the meantime, they were so destitute for men in that battle that they took guys from all the outfits around. They took guys from my outfit. I lost some guys in my gun crew. We had to send them there, ill-prepared. Next thing you know, they were in infantry. Freezing, cold weather. I don't know how any of them survived. But we went from there to Metz, France. The Battle of the Bulge had happened, and it was sort of being controlled a little bit, but we were somewhere near Bastogne, and I slept on a field next to a fort in Metz that was on the Maginot Line. Well, I remember reading in history about the Maginot Line, how the French put up forts along that area to protect themselves and to stop the Germans from coming in there. Of course, the Germans went around it. But we were by a fort with snow on the ground, couldn't see anything, didn't know what the heck was going on. And Battle of the Bulge was just winding down. And we stayed there for a few days, freezing. As a matter of fact, we were sleeping in tents, and it was so cold that I finally went out at night, and I brought my little thin sleeping bag that I had into a ditch. And I slept in a ditch like a grave 3 nights, because it was a little warmer than laying on the ground. So that helped me a lot. But anyway, we finally moved on, and we moved towards Germany, and then it hit us. Hey, wait a minute. We went through that battle of the invasion, going across that channel, which was a scary damn thing. And here we are, we got to cross this Rhine River. The Germans are going to be steep. It will be a bloodbath. It was a big worry. We're going along. I was with the 10th Armored Division and an infantry outfit, and the lead tanks came across a bridge that had been blown but was still standing there at Remagen. It saved us. It was a savior. Because of that bridge not going down, the Germans tried desperately to get it down, and we were there to shoot at the planes to stop them, and we didn't know how successful we were. I didn't know till later on, many years later, I read that we were quite successful. We knocked down a lot of planes. But anyway, the bridge lasted for 5 days. In those 5 days, they got thousands of troops across it. It was such a blessing that it spread the Germans out. So we had to make another crossing because of that bridge. We moved down south of it, a couple 100 yards maybe. No bridge or anything. They were going to have to evade, make a crossing there. It was at Oppenheim. I remember it. And we pulled into this area, and the infantry outfit was right next to us. Between us and the Rhine River, we were on a narrow road. I could see all the infantry guys dug in. They're all sitting in their foxholes. They didn't look at us. We were parked there for quite a while. We could see them, but they didn't even look at us. They had the strangest looks on their face. No smiles, just looking out into space, and some of them reading their Bibles. It was such a sad thing. While we were sitting there, the Germans were across the river, and they could see us. Ordinarily, we would have pulled right into a field, all 4 guns, and set up in this field. But we couldn't do that right now. We had to go in 1 gun at a time. 1 gun would go into that field. They'd quickly set the gun down, get the gun all set, dig a foxhole, and the next gun would go in. And it took a while for all 4 guns to get in there. We were under the view of the Germans. It was scary as hell. About 9 o'clock that night, I read this later, because I didn't know of time or anything. The infantry started moving across that river on boats. They went across on boats, little boats. We could hear the machine gun firing. We could hear the guys hollering. Guns were shooting. There was so much shooting going on over our heads. Guns behind us shooting over. After we were all firing, the ground was shaking. It was that way for a little while. Didn't take too long, it seems like. It all quieted down. The infantry made it. They got across with not that much resistance because the Germans, they were so spread out. What a break. There were so many breaks. The break that I had going over to Normandy, crossing that channel was a big. Now here, going across that Rhine River, this happened, and we survived it. We did it. We had troops across at both sides. That broke the backs of the Germans. The war from there on in wasn't bad, but we didn't realize it. We had no idea. It was afterthoughts, that we realized that things got better. We anticipated things to be the same. So we went across at Oppenheim, spearheading like we were. At the end of the war, we traveled from there to Munich, then from Munich down into Bavaria to Austria. And I was at Linz, Austria, when the war ended.
How did you feel?
Well, we got word that the war was over. We all such a relief, we were just so happy. But we had nothing to celebrate with, I can remember it was early part of May. The weather was pretty good. 3 of us went down away from the gun and got into the woods and came to the Danube, the river Danube going by there. I said to the guys, look, I've got to get my clothes off. I've got to get into that water. I've got to say I swam in the Danube. And here it was around the 1st of May, freezing, and the sun was out, and a couple of us got naked and got into the water.
You were skinny dipping.
Yeah. And it was so freezing, but I says, well, at least I can say I swam in the Danube. I wish I could say I swam at the Rhine, but I didn't have that chance. But anyway, well, there's so much to talk about, I never talked about it with my family or my kids. But a few years ago, I started writing articles for the local paper. And people liked them. And I would write one a month. Well, I started writing about my war experience. And my kids said, geez, Dad, I didn't know you did that. They read about it. I didn't tell them anything about it.
Well, there's a lot to tell.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for telling your story today.
Oh, I'm glad to do it.